Good morning.
Hello.
And welcome to Let's Talk Movies with Moira and Shannon.
It's us.
It's us. I'm Shannon Penrod.
And I'm Moira Giammatteo.
And I'm thrilled to be here with you, my friend.
Me too.
We're going to talk about movies.
We are.
And
yes.
some of the bigger blockbusters that are out. And then we were just saying that we're a little doc heavy this week.
Yes.
Month.
We seem to have gone on a streak.
Yes. So I have a question for you. Do you say documentary or do you say documentary?
I say documentary, but I say documentarian if it's the person that's doing it. But I don't know. It's like biopic and biopic.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know what the right thing is.
I didn't really ever think about it until the other day when my beloved husband said to me, "You say it funny." And I said, "I do?" Because I'm always saying, well, I saw this documentary. Mm-hmm. And he says, I don't think that's how you say that. But I'm going to keep saying it however I say it, because otherwise I'll have to think about it too hard. And I don't want to have to think about anything.
Yes.
But exciting movies that we're going to do. I want everybody to know that you can be writing in right now. We are live right now on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and about a dozen other sites. So feel free to write in. We are pre-recording this, mm-hmm. so I will be watching and commenting
I'll try to
I
jump
think you're
on.
busy, but
Yeah.
if you can. And we always love to hear from you either way, because we love to know what we've reinstituted our rewind,
yes.
which I'm really excited about. So if there's a movie that you want us to look at, it doesn't have to be a current one. You can write to us, ask us to do that, and we're happy to do that. We always like to start with an update. If you have anything that you want to tell us from TACA.
Well, we are gearing up for our in-person conference that's coming in October, the weekend of the 20th, I think. And we have a wonderful speaker. Shannon Penrod's going to be there.
I'm speaking on Friday morning, the 20th. I'm excited.
And it's going to be a great weekend. We also are making available, like anybody that's registered to go in person will also be able to view the recorded sessions after the fact.
Which is great.
November 13th through the end of the year, you'll have access to that. And if you cannot make it in person, there is a separate ticket for just recorded access, and that's $75. And you will get recorded sessions, same time frame, November 13th through the end of the year. Watch all of them again and again, take notes, and there are scholarships available if that is out of your reach. For California Regional Center clients, we are vendored with the Regional Center, so that is something you could apply for with the Regional Center with your caseworker, and come one, come all. It's a good weekend to learn,
Well, and we've kind of buried the headline because, yes, I am speaking on Friday morning, but Dr. Temple Grandin is the keynote speaker.
Yes.
She will be there. There's even a meet and greet where you can stand in line to actually meet her.
Yes, and she is an
amazing.
absolute doll about signing books. She will sign, I'm sure she will bring, last time she was a speaker for us, she brought books you could purchase. I bought several as gifts for people, and she signed multiple copies. She's a doll.
You can't beat it.
Absolute doll.
And she's lovely. And if you haven't had an opportunity to meet her in your life, you should really put that on your bucket list. Mm-hmm. And that's a great opportunity because there is a meet and greet on the schedule.
Yes.
So, that's a thing. Mm-hmm. So, and not only that, you guys have the best resource fair. Listen, is it 3 or 4 tracks that you guys have at the same time? I think it's 3.
It's 3. I don't remember if and they're going to kill me back at the office. I don't remember. But we do try to tailor them to, we do have an adult issues and concerns and learning sessions. But we also have some take action sessions in this conference, which I think will be super helpful to help you get your mind around all of this. And there'll be volunteers there and people whose brains you can pick. Yeah. And it's very good. You walk away with a game plan, and that's what we always want to see.
You also walk away with your batteries recharged because you get to be with other people who are like-minded, and like-minded and different-minded, who will help you to learn something that you walk away with that maybe you didn't know before, but you feel like, oh, I have a community, I have a base. So it's really wonderful. The point I was trying to make is because there's these different tracks. So most things like Temple Grandin, everybody goes to see that. It's open to everybody. But then at other times, like when I'm speaking, there's 2 other speakers at the exact same time. So you can kind of look and go, okay, what do I need made today. And then you go to that one today. But what's great is then you get the recording so you can go and watch the other two. Every other conference I've been to, it's like when there are multiple tracks, you feel like
you lose out.
Yes, you feel like Sophie's Choice. What am I missing? And you don't want to do that. And the other thing for me, because I have the attention span of lettuce, is that often I will go in, and usually I come and I interview people at the resource fair, and I get really into all of that, and then I find I've missed half of the talk for the one that just started.
Right.
So what's great is that you can look at all of it afterwards, and it's really about helping you with wherever you are right now.
Right.
It's not one size fits all. It's really about charting your course. And if you're not sure where you are, there's people to help you to figure out where.
Yes, we will have a mentor table. So our volunteer mentors will be there to help you look at the schedule and maybe determine what's my priority right now. Here are the issues. Oh, you need to see this lecture or whatever. And that's kind of the thing I think that makes TACA special. Our beautiful, amazing, intelligent volunteers who have hearts of gold and are just willing to help you not have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
They want to reach out to the person behind them to pull you forward. So I love that about TACA.
And there's everybody under the sun. Like you know, I remember the first time I ever went to a TACA conference, and there were all these people in these matching shirts, and I was like, is it a cult? Is it an army? What is this? But then, you know, then I talked to a dad. You know, we had a whole big long conversation, and then I talked to a mom who was there with a baby in a stroller, and you know, I mean, there's just like everybody in every walk of life in because listen, that's our community.
That's our community, yeah.
We are a big old spectrum rainbow of everything, and that's really represented at TACA. So I think you should go.
You should go. End of
you
story.
Should go.
You should
and
go.
Listen, I don't know anybody that's ever gone, not a single person that's ever gone and not come back and said, that was life-changing.
Good.
And that includes people who simply go virtually and are looking at videos later on. So, you know, I'm just saying you should do that. That's all. And I will be there. And so see me when you're there.
And I'll be there too.
There we go. Maybe we can talk movies while we're sitting there.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
That'd be really fun. We'll start a little subgroup. Anyway, all right. So we reached that point in the program where we are going to talk about what are you watching? Because this is my favorite conversation.
I know. Super fun.
Ever.
Super fun.
So where do we want, and I don't know if you're advancing slides, Traven. I didn't even think to ask that. We're going to start out by talking about this first movie.
Right.
And we're going to look at it right here.
And
Here it comes. Here it comes. I believe it's
coming.
Indiana Jones. It is.
It is. It's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And of course, it's Harrison Ford in the classic role of Indiana Jones, joined by Phoebe Waller-Bridge and the Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah.
I love Mads Mikkelsen.
Do I have to? Okay.
I do.
I'm just checking. Okay. All right.
I
okay.
have to love
All
Mads
right. All right. You're allowed.
Toby Jones and Ethan Isidore, directed by James Mangold. So, I really love Harrison Ford, and I remember going to Grauman's Chinese Theater in '77 to see Star Wars, and I remember going to the Americana in the Valley to see Indiana Jones in 1981. So he's been a heartthrob for me for my whole life. And we recently rewatched Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and I think that was very helpful for this film for me because not a fan of Temple of Doom, and by comparison, this is one of the better, one of the fun offerings. It was wonderful to see him fighting Nazis again. It seems we're always needing to fight Nazis, so it's nice to see Indy take them on. And, of course, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, if she's fabulous. If you haven't seen Fleabag, you must. The premise is the Dial of Destiny is an artifact that created by Archimedes that can allow for time travel. So of course the Nazis want it. And the magic of CGI, we see Harrison Ford as a young man in the 40s fighting near the end of the war, fighting with Mads Mikkelsen and a bunch of other Nazis to keep that dial out of the wrong hands. And then we end up back transported to the late 60s later on, and Indy is now about to retire from his professorship at Hunter College, and he's, I mean, Harrison Ford is in his 80s now, you know, and looking like a man in his 80s, a handsome man in his 80s, but still. So now the goddaughter of his friend that we'd met shows up, and they're trying to find the dial, and the adventure goes forward. And I'm not sorry I saw this, but I hate to say it, it was a little forgettable, But again, because I had just seen Temple of Doom, and that's just so terrible, that I was like, this is better than Temple of Doom, I don't know if that's the right thing, but the best moment for me was near the end, and I won't spoil it, but I felt like Indy faces his failures and kind of his regrets, and there was a lovely emotional moment in that, and I thought that was a nice moment for that character. But overall, I'm like, it was fun, but
interesting.
What do you think?
I'm going to surprise you. I loved it.
Ooh,
there we go. I loved it. I am not a huge Harrison Ford fan, although, like, I'm talking acting wise. I feel like he's kind of, it's all going to be a specific one note kind of a thing. I have had the great distinctive pleasure of waiting on Harrison Ford when I was a waitress in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where he lived and had a ranch for many years. And I can tell you, he's a gentleman, and he has the most beautiful skin that ever a person had, which is unexplicable as much as he's been out in the sun. But I mean, I just couldn't get over how his skin looked. This was many, many, many years ago.
Yeah.
But, I enjoyed the first Indiana Jones movie, and I know I've seen the other ones, but I couldn't tell you anything about them, except that my son was fascinated by them. So they would be on in our house all the time, and I would see little scenes. I was not a big Indiana Jones. And I don't know that I even saw the last one.
Oh, the King of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure that I saw it. So my son went to see this a couple of weeks ago when it first came out, because he was all excited. He was a big Indiana Jones fan. And he came home and was not a fan of this movie. He was like, the Nazis again, really? And all the CGI, he wasn't having it. So we kind of waited, and then we went, and I loved it. My husband loved it. I love Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I'm the biggest Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I agree. If you have not seen Fleabag,
you must.
It is the best thing ever. So I was worried for her, because I've seen her do a couple of things, and I've been like, how is her career going to flourish?
Right.
I thought she did a great job in this. She's a little physically awkward, so her running, and she's a stick of a woman. So
a sexy plank, as she's described.
There we go. But so I was all the running and hiding and dodging kind of thing. I was like, okay, would have liked a physical coach in there for some of that. But for the fight scenes, I thought she was right there in it, and all the car chases. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I said, do we have to love Mads Mikkelsen? Because the only time I truly love him is when he's playing a villain.
Yes.
When he's trying to play a straight character, I'm not having it.
Oh, did you see that Another Round or whatever the one?
Yes, and I absolutely hated that. I hated that. That's why I said, do I have to? I hated the movie. I hated the premise of the movie. I hated him in the movie. It's like, let's be drunk all the time.
Right.
We can manage it.
Mads can manage it.
Well, not in my book. Not in my book. But I allow that for you, but not in my book. But I thought that I'm a huge fan of Toby Jones, too. I loved the CGI. They've gotten it better and better. It's still a little funky. The lighting of it is just, but I was shocked at how much of the movie was the CGI, and I kind of want to know how. But I bought it. I was in it. I was like, okay, this makes sense to me. I was okay with it. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was a rip-roaring time. I then went to a movie the next night, which we'll talk about next month, and it was the exact same movie with different actors in a different time period. I can't get over that, but we'll talk about that next month. Next month we'll talk about that.
Stay tuned.
All right. Moving on, our next film.
Here we
go. What is it?
It is Asteroid City, and here's where I lose my cool kid status, because I don't like Wes Anderson, but I just don't get it. But fabulous cast. I mean, look at this cast.
Yes.
Scarlett Johansson.
I had to do 2 columns, and I left people out.
I know. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just an amazing cast.
Did we say it's Asteroid City?
It is, yeah, I did say Asteroid City,
thank
yeah.
you.
So for those of you listening, and so this is, the film is, the premise is about gathering this group of smart kids who are going to get a science award and also there to observe a celestial phenomenon in Asteroid City. The city is a remote desert town whose claim to fame is an asteroid fell to Earth there and made a giant crater. So as with all Wes Anderson films, the visuals are everything.
Yeah.
I mean, the color, the composition, it's fabulous. The story, not so much. Jason Schwartzman, is a Wes Anderson regular, and he plays the father of a young boy who's getting one of the awards, and also triplet girls. And he hasn't told them that their mother had died previously 3 weeks prior, and is going to do so on this trip. So there's all this kind of, oh, what's going to happen? And the car breaks down, and they end up being stuck in this town. And then Scarlett Johansson is one of the other parents, and she's also a movie star, and she looks amazing. She's got like Liz Taylor black hair, and she looks incredible. So it's a visual feast. But there was a moment with Jason Schwartzman's character where there's a play within the film, all that stuff, and he questions the director, am I doing it right? I don't understand the play. And I felt like raising my hand and saying, me? Neither. I'm with you. So I know he's beloved, the Wes Anderson, but I don't get it. I kind of want him to direct something he didn't write because I feel like it's so quirky and it keeps me at a distance. So I think you're a fan, so you tell me.
Well, I am not a Wes Anderson fan.
Oh.
I'm very hit and miss with him, where, I will see things and I will go, okay, it's clever, but you don't have me.
Right.
And the story doesn't hold up, and so I get annoyed more often than not. So I'm not a diehard fan. And then every once in a while he'll do something and I'll go, that right there is really good. Why can't you do a whole movie like that? I think he's come pretty darn close with this one.
Okay.
I loved this movie.
Did you? Okay.
I loved it so much. And I loved the visuals. I loved how I'm very much, I'm going to go all theater professor on you, but I love Brecht. And I love Brecht, says, I'm not going to allow you to get comfortable in your seat. I'm going to remind you that you're watching a play.
Well, and I
he
thought
kept
of you
doing that.
watching this.
Yes.
I thought, oh,
yeah, and it was like just when you would get comfortable, he'd go, rump, and now we're going to take you outside, and we're going to hear the actors talking about a scene that's yet to come. I loved that. I loved how he made fun of himself. I loved the bad sort of low-tech effects. I thought it was hilarious. I laughed hysterically. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It fell apart in the end for me. I feel like he chimped out at the end and didn't know how to end it and was like, I guess I'm going to do this, and that was bad. But other than that, I'm 100% confident that this should be in the 10 best pictures for the year. I don't think it will be best picture, largely because of the end. If he did not stick the landing on the end, but if he had, it's the best movie I've seen this year.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, what's the best movie you've seen this year?
Probably Reality.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All
I
right.
felt like that one took me by surprise,
Okay.
and I think I kind of knew going in that I might get annoyed by Wes Anderson being quirky. And there's always lists, and I was actually going to make a list
of how
it annoyed me.
Oh my gosh, and I found it charming, and I just thought it was witty and unexpected. But this time, sometimes his stories I don't get. This story
you got.
I was with all the way up until the end, and I went, oh Wes.
Oh Wes.
Oh Wes. Who didn't stop you from doing this? Wes. But yeah. So that was me. Loved it.
There you go.
But I appreciate you going to see it because I was so excited.
I will watch Wes Anderson for you. That's how much.
I watched Renfield for you,
Exactly.
so there we go. All right, here we go. What's our next movie?
Next up is No Hard Feelings with Jennifer Lawrence, Andrew Barth Feldman, and Matthew Broderick. And so this film has a really simple premise. Jennifer Lawrence's character is a local in Montauk, and she kind of hates when all the summer crowd comes in, and a bunch of rich people are making it difficult for the working class to afford to live there because it's a beautiful seaside location. Her car gets repossessed, and now she doesn't have the ability to make money off of these summer vacationers by doing her Uber driving. She finds an ad in Craigslist requesting a young lady show a young man about to leave for college the ways of the world. P.S. The ad is placed by said young man's parents. And the prize for making him a man is a low-mileage Buick.
Coincidentally.
Yes. Interesting. So the fact that her character is 32 and the young man is 19, you kind of have to I'm just going to put that aside, or else it'll stop you from watching this. And Harold and Maude, this ain't. This is no Harold and Maude. It was uneven, I felt. The film was uneven, but it does allow us to see Jennifer Lawrence and her fabulous comedic skills. And the young man, Andrew Barth Feldman, added a lovely layer of tenderness, and he also, they just played off each other very well, and they've developed a very believable friendship, and I liked all that about it. There are funny moments, but it kind of wavered between being like a Porky's raunchy sex comedy and then trying to be Harold and Maude, and so it felt like a little bit uneven in all of that, and my darn watch keeps going off. But like I said, I just like to see Jennifer Lawrence doing different things, so I was happy to see this. So, but yeah, it was okay. What about you? What do you think?
Well, I thought it was a summer romp, and for that, I give it top marks. To me, it was Pretty Woman meets, your phone's talking to us. Pretty Woman meets Mystic Pizza, right? The two things put together, right? And it wasn't something, we're not going to get any award nominations for this. It's not that kind of a movie, but I thought it was a summer movie. It was sort of, and there was an element of romance, but I thought it was respectfully done in terms of the age difference, in terms of that. And, it wasn't brilliant. No awards here, but I enjoyed it. There were a couple of things that were hilarious. One moment in particular that I laughed so hard that I was disruptive in the movie theater, and we thought we were going to have to call an ambulance. It is the second hardest I have ever laughed in a movie. The first one being, for your consideration, laughing at, what is her name? Catherine O'Hara. So, I laughed so hard and so long that I was disruptive and making it so that people couldn't hear, and I couldn't stop. I just kept on laughing, and I was doing the fat woman kind of laughing, and if you can do that for me, I'm a fan, I'm all in. And so there was definitely that moment. And then there were other moments that I thought, okay, there's a shock factor to some of it. I think, that they were trying really hard to be relevant and, instead of just keeping it a sweet little story. But I thought it was funny. There have been so many people who've had so much to say about the helicopter parenting of the parents. But, I identify as a helicopter parent.
I saw it with my daughter, and she kept giving me the side eye. I was like, all right.
Yes. And in that respect, I felt, that it said something to me. And I thought that it was interesting, the relationship between the two, and that there was definitely a something there. I wouldn't say spark, because that makes it sound like it's sexual in nature, which it wasn't. But there was something about these two actors that was compelling, I guess is the way I want to say it. So I think it's worth going to it. I think but you've got to know what you're going into, that it's just fluff. It's just summer fluff. It's probably a good date movie.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's not for younger kids.
Not for the youngsters.
No. So anyway, okay. And then I think we move on to some of our docs.
All of our documentaries, of which there are legion. 𝗃𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃 is a documentary directed by Sue Kim, and it features Max Park and Felix Zemdegs. And it's about people that are the fastest at solving Rubik's Cube puzzle, not just the 3x3, which is the classic, but also a 4x4 version that came out later. Those just hurt my brain, so I'm amazed when people can do this. And there's also a separate category for people who can do it with one hand. And
Crazy
it's incredible to watch. So the focus is on Max Park, a young man with autism who has shown an incredible ability to solve Rubik's cubes. And I think his parents originally were like, here, for fine motor skills, why don't you try this? And he's competing with champions from all over the world. And he ends up competing against his idol, 𝗵𝗂𝗂𝗧, who holds most of the world records. Through the competition, he knocks down each one of Felix's records, but they could become friends. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. Max's parents, discovering this interest, they were like a lot of us folks, with kiddos on the spectrum. If they're interested in something, it's like, this is a great thing. They like it. It could be a social thing we could do. And so that's the way they end up exploring this. And I think the message to me is, it renews my faith in humanity to see what a lovely young man this Felix gentleman is. And of course, Max is delightful. And it's another sort of reaffirming, follow your child's lead into what they're interested in, because it will open up a world, much like my son's interest in animals has opened up this whole world for me, for our family, for him, so I really loved that. And 𝗏𝗏, Max's dad, he's presented at TACA conferences before, and he is just a nice guy, just a sweetheart. So I very much enjoyed this. What were your thoughts?
Oh, I loved it. I deeply enjoyed it too. I mean, it's a good film. I want to say that.
Yes.
It's good storytelling. You don't have to have a child on the spectrum to deeply appreciate the subject matter. I think anybody could watch this, and it's compelling. I'm using that word again. But because it becomes so much of life is, like Game of Thrones. It's this thing about, okay, we've got these two titans, and it starts out that way, people talking about, well, I'm a fan of Max, well, I'm a fan of Felix, and, who is going to be the person who's going to do this? And yet it's surprising in that we see the humanity of both of these young men, and how important it is to them, but how important their relationship is, and what that relationship is within this whole community of people who are speed gamers, and what it's like to triumph and what it's like to not triumph and what that means. I just thought it was really beautifully done, good storytelling. I do want to say that last month, Max broke another record. Did you see that in the news?
I did not.
Yes,
Oh,
he broke another record, and so that's just a lovely thing. And I also love that we got to know his parents a little bit.
Yes.
And I love that it wasn't the first thing that we learned about him was that he was on the autism spectrum.
Right.
Like, we got to see that he is a 𝗃𝗵𝗂𝗧 hero.
Right.
And that he had all these fans for quite a while before the parents said, oh, he's on the spectrum. And then before you even got to see that, like, the level of on the spectrum that he is. Because he's not this, incredibly oververbal think tank, very, that kind of on the spectrum. That is not the kind of on the spectrum he is. And I just felt that the way that was handled was particularly fabulous.
Yep, with dignity. Yeah.
I just loved it. Because isn't that what we all want our kids to be known for who they are?
Yes.
Not for what their number rating is on some ridiculous scale of whatever. Throw that in the ocean.
Yeah.
And I love that. We got to know Max.
Yes.
First, before we talked about diagnosis. So, good job.
Fabulous show. And I can't remember which streaming service. Oh, Netflix. It says right there. A Netflix documentary.
Yes. It's available to you right now.
Now?
The film is a couple of years old, and I feel like it probably didn't get as much hype as it would have because it came out in the pandemic. But you should be watching it and spread the word.
Yep.
All right, let's take a look at what our next film is.
Our next documentary is Rock Hudson, All That Heaven Allowed, directed by Stephen Kijak, and of course, the fabulous Rock Hudson is the feature. And this is the life and career of Rock Hudson, covered by this documentary. But the title is kind of a play on one of his biggest hit movies, All That Heaven Allows, and we follow the creation of Rock Hudson, because he was a skinny, closeted gay man from Illinois named either two different things I've seen. Name was either Roy Harold Shearer or Roy Fitzgerald. So people can comment and tell me which one's right. What struck me about the documentary is they were mostly voiceovers with intercut with footage from him and home movies and different things like that. And then eventually we meet some former lovers and friends that were in the inner circle of his closeted gay life. And those gentlemen are interviewed on screen. So that was an interesting choice because they had people like Doris Day and Linda Evans talking about interacting with Rock. And his coming out eventually at the end of his life as having been a gay man and having AIDS was, I think, and they mentioned in the documentary, it probably saved lives. And I think it was a way to put a face on this horrible thing that was not even being talked about by our president at the time. So it was also the fact that he was such a man's man. And I think that sort of upset people's preconceived notions at the time of what does it mean to be a gay man. And so that I thought was really great that they kind of focused on that. But I was amazed by how his sexuality was very well known within Hollywood, but not outside of it. And that would not happen today. No. There's just no way. But I think that nobody had anything negative to say about him. So I think that was part of it. There was this loyalty towards kind of protecting the image, And interestingly, he had to have certain training to look more butch, which was interesting to me, because he just seems to embody the all-American hunk kind of thing. And it's interesting. I mean, behind the mask, he was apparently just lovely, kind, gentle person. And also, warning, if you're going to watch this with your mother-in-law, which I did, there's some pretty graphic conversations and some male nudity. So heads up. But I found it an interesting documentary. I was pleased to see, kind of what his inner life was like. What about you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm a huge Rock Hudson fan and always was. And years ago, when I first got out of college, I got to work in an office with his best friend. Jim Menon, because when I was working in New York on Broadway shows, Jim Menon was the company manager for Cats, and I was working I was the office manager for the office that ran that show. So I would hear all these stories about Rock Hudson, and this, I think it was like right as he was being diagnosed. So I don't think. It's funny because in my mind, I knew that he had AIDS, and so it's sort of like my mind plays tricks on me about when he came. Yeah, when the world knew. But and Jim only had wonderful things to say about Rock Hudson, and I remember the first time I went to see Cats, and I'm working in this big Broadway office now, and they send me to go see Cats, and the next morning they want to know what I think of it, and even then I was somebody who was way too open with my opinions, and I said, "Oh my God, it's terrible!
It is terrible.
It's just horrible. Why is it the longest running show on Broadway? It's just horrible." And I watched everybody's face fall because that paid a lot of the bills in the office. We had other shows, and there's Jim Menon, he's the company manager, and he was like, oh. And then later I said, "I'm sorry, did I hurt your feelings? Because it's your livelihood?" And he said, "No," he said, "you're just the only other person beside Rock Hudson that would tell the truth to me." And I went, "What?" And he said, "Oh, Rock's my best friend." And he said the same thing after he saw it, "Shannon, so you're in good company." So I've always thought about that and been so proud that Rock Hudson and I have the same opinion of Cats. I mean, but anyway, so I loved that part of it. I loved that. For me, it felt like what happened is that the community gathered around him and said, "We're going to protect you." And that the decision to talk in this film, I both loved this and I kind of want to criticize it a little bit. It seemed like they were still protecting him a great deal. That the only things that they really talk about, where they talk any smack about him was his prowess in bed. And they are very, they're very forthcoming about that. That's why you don't want to watch it with your mother-in-law. but nobody had a bad thing to say. But I loved that, and then there was a little part of me that was like, I'll bet there was some stuff that you guys are still protecting him on.
Yeah, maybe so.
But I loved that more and more, like when we saw Bohemian Rhapsody, and they kind of glossed over the fact that, you know, this is a gay man who was very promiscuous, and that got AIDS and died. I felt like they did not gloss over that with Rock, that they were like, this man loved sex, had no problem asking for it, that this was, you know, I guess maybe I would have liked to have heard more about, was he ever in love?
Yeah.
Was there ever a long-term partner?
Right.
What was that like? And that part wasn't a part of the movie. You can't really judge for what isn't a part of the movie, but, you know, I guess maybe I'd like another film about Rock Hudson. But my goodness, what a gorgeous man he was on the inside and the outside, and what a great sense of humor. And I also loved that throughout the movie they showed all the movies that I grow up with loving, and showed all the places where they were kind of making fun of the fact that my grandmother did not believe that he was gay. Even when they said that he'd married Jim Nabors, and my grandmother was like, I would believe that of Jim Nabors, but not of Rock Hudson. And, you know, and they address that in the movie. So it's worth watching. 𝗃𝗁𝗃𝗃𝗃, what a great guy.
Yep.
And he had the same opinion of cats as me, so there we go.
There you go. Me too.
Okay, our next doc that we want to talk about.
Yes. Our next doc is Tony Hawk, Until the Wheels Come Off. And of course, it's about the legendary skateboarder Tony Hawk. And it covers his rise to stardom, and then the lean years when skateboarding kind of fell out of fashion, and then how he came back again with the beginning of the X Games. Now, I was riveted by the dedication and determination that he had trying to perfect these different outrageous tricks, but I gotta say, I was super worried about the damage to his body.
Oh yeah.
And of course, each of the skateboarders interviewed from that time frame are all now in their over the age of 50.
Yeah.
And they're all feeling every ache and pain from the wipeouts and concussions and things like that. And it just worried me because I thought, ooh, you know, I worry about traumatic brain injury for all athletes, you know, so it is that, but I was blown away by their focus, you know, that was an interesting thing. However, it's like a very macho kind of sport, and it was very punk rock, you know, and I remember that time frame because the music in this is fabulous, and I was just like, oh, it was bringing me back to the 80s, and early 90s, I guess, but the most moving moment, and I don't remember the skater's name, was a really punk rock kind of skater guy who had been so hardcore that he spit at Tony when he was a kid, and he shared how generous Tony was regarding the death of that skateboarder's son or child. I don't know if I think it was his son, and that same guy had said something not so great when Tony's father died. So he was very moved, and he got choked up, and he was very moved at the generosity of spirit, and I just loved that. But ultimately, it was hard to watch the punishing aspect of try it again, but it was also thrilling to see when he landed it. So I get, you know, I don't know, it was a world I would not have really looked into, so I'm kind of glad I saw that aspect of it, but yeah, it was very male dominated, very you know, gritty kind of thing, but yeah, what do you think?
I didn't mean to watch this. I want to be honest about that. That I was up one night and I hadn't taken my pills until late, and I had to sit up for an hour. And I was like, well, what's on? And it was just about to start. And I was like, oh, I'll watch a couple of minutes. I'm not a big Tony Hawk fan. It was all during the years when I was in college and graduate school. I wasn't watching TV, didn't really, I mean, I was aware of who he was, but wasn't watching any of this. So it was like coming into it pretty fresh eyes. I also want to say that this was directed by Sam Jones, who I've always wondered, what in the heck does Sam Jones do? Does everybody know who Sam Jones is? Do you ever like turn on the TV and there's a guy that's interviewing very big celebrities all in black and white, and they're sitting in two chairs like this, but it's all in black and white, and he does these in-depth interviews? That's Sam Jones, who typically is known as a photographer. So I thought, oh, this is so fascinating that this is being directed by Sam Jones, and most of the footage in it, I mean, there's interviews, but a lot of the footage footage. It's like home movies and competitions that he did. So I found that fascinating. Okay, so having said that, I think the best thing in the movie is the soundtrack. I'm totally with you on this. And I thought that it was a very glossed over, let's make Tony Hawk look even better than he has in the past, kind of look at anything that was hard or difficult, they kind of like would go, and then this happened, and then those, and then watch me land this jump again. That, you know, I mean, we got to see the ups and the downs a little bit, but, you know, so he works really hard, and his dad helps him, and he starts landing the jumps, and he gains fame and buys a house and is married and has kids. And then somehow, like, everything, the bottom falls out and the marriage is having trouble, but then that wife disappears into thin air. We don't ever hear what happened. We don't really know what happens with those kids until much later in the film, where we see the adult child, the oldest child, say, yeah, you know, he was an interesting dad. You know, and we don't go into any of that. Then, you know, he's back on the rise again, and he's, you know, a star again. And there's like one little, like, maybe minute-long segment where he's like, oh, and I kind of lost my way, and there might have been some drug use, and I really had to hit rock bottom, and I had to ask God for, and now everything's great. And you just go, maybe that was the story. Maybe focusing on how hard he had to work to land that jump.
Yes, the jump
would have been interesting, but instead it was just very skateboard porn with really good music. And isn't Tony Hawk great? And my goodness, the man's a legend. And he certainly has earned it with his fearlessness of, you know, literally, I mean, the name is great too, until the wheels come off. Yeah. Because that's what he's going to do.
Yes. Oh, and that was one of the other skaters basically said that. It's like a compulsion.
Yeah.
They said that people don't understand what they get out of it. And I thought, well, I guess that's true of a lot of high-level athletes that or risk takers that, you know.
Well, it's a perseveration. Our community understands that. It's a perseveration. And, you know, and sometimes perseverations can lead to not focusing on other things that might save your life.
Right.
And we all understand, like, what's the difference between a passion and a perseveration? And this is a perseveration. So, you know, I mean, if you like Tony Hawk and if you like to see landing skateboard and you can stomach all the falls, and the soundtrack is worth showing up for.
I agree.
But it is a very male look at it. All right.
So our next documentary is Wham!
Talk about
Wham!
Soundtracks.
Directed by Chris Smith, Andrew Ridgeley, and George Michael, of course. And I had actually just been texting a friend of mine about Wham! Because when he and I were in London in 1985, and we saw Frankie Goes to Hollywood, the Hammersmith Odeon. And when we were there, we were looking around and we were like, hey, isn't that the other guy from Wham? And otherwise known as Andrew Ridgeley. And this documentary gave me just a greater appreciation of that other guy from Wham. Because he, you know, it chronicles their years of success, 81 to 86. They did have a lot of success together, and then eventually George Michael launched a very successful solo career. And I loved that Andrew Ridgeley was not bitter, you know, at least the way he appeared. I mean, he actually doesn't appear in this documentary. He's not on screen. And I read somewhere that was a choice because he says, well, George can't be on screen with me, so I'm not doing it. And he looked like he had just a really great time and was, you know, happy that it happened and not bitter that it ended. And he shared that George showed very quickly that his songwriting ability was just exponentially getting better and better. So he was kind of like, oh, yeah, you're the guy. And and there was a point where George had shared with them that he was gay, and the other members of the band and Andrew were really supportive, and I thought that was great too. The footage of their concerts in the 80s with the clothes, and later on the Live Aid concert and the recording of "Do They Know It's Christmas," in the UK, it took me right back. I could almost smell the Aquanet. I mean, it was like, I remember this well. I enjoyed that. You know, and I liked often when you see these band documentaries, it's about how they all ended up hating each other. And this was nice. They, you know, and sadly, of course, George Michael has since passed away, but it was nice to hear Andrew Ridgeley speak about it from his perspective, you know, and it was fun.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it because I would watch anything with Wham, right? Because that's a time from my life that, you know, but I'm not buying it.
Okay.
I'm not buying it. You know, if there was a subtitle to this movie, it would be Andrew Ridgeley's a great guy.
Okay.
And let's all not forget that. I'm not buying it.
Okay, so you're thinking of it like a propaganda, like we were talking about last time.
Oh, it's totally a propaganda film, especially about, because, you know, at the very end of the film, I don't want to give too much away, but at the end of the film, it's like, well, you know, and George had to go and be who George was, and Andrew needed to go and be who Andrew was. And I was like, who is Andrew now? What did Andrew go and do? Why aren't we talking about that? Why are we not sharing what Andrew went on to go do? We all know what George went on to do. What happened to Andrew? And there was this element of, well, Andrew had things that he wanted to do too, and they never tell us what those things were. And so I'm not buying it. I don't think, you know, there's a reason why every movie we've ever watched about every band, when somebody gets the person to be solo artist and go on, that there are hard feelings. There's a reason why. I'm not buying it.
No, okay.
And for 20 years, he was the other guy from Wham, and nobody knew what his name was. I'm not buying that there's not some bitterness there. Now, maybe he's the most wonderful guy in the world, and then in which case I apologize, but I am the cynic that's going to say, I'm not buying that. And maybe, you know, like, what a wonderful way to rewrite history now and go, and I said, you go do that, and I said, oh, your writing abilities are so much better than mine, and I'm going to step out of your way and I'm not buying that.
Okay.
Not buying it.
Okay.
And there's another George Michael doc that's out right now too, and I haven't seen that yet, and I want to see what it says.
Yeah, curious.
Because I'm not buying it.
Well,
but lovely, and I'll watch them in their bright pink and jumping up and down and Wake Me Up Before You Go anytime. Happy to watch it. Great, you know, opportunity to do that. And if the fairy tale is true, yippee-ki-yay. I would be so happy if that were the case. But I read the moment completely different, that he went to Andrew and his girlfriend, who was a singer in the band, and said to them, I'm gay, and that they were very accepting of it, but said, now is not the time to come out with this.
Oh, yeah, that may have indeed been the case.
And that he said, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No.
But that he said in the documentary, they were the two worst people to have asked, because then I felt like I couldn't come out.
Oh.
And that led to him being in the closet longer and was, you know, very, I mean, how can you be that? That makes me so sad. So I didn't feel like they were incredibly supportive. I thought that they were supportive of, well, yeah, be gay, but for heaven's sake, don't tell anybody. Don't act that way. What's the line in the one song where he says, you know, got a new face, new suit for the boys at MTV? Do you remember that line from the song? And I felt like, oh, well, you know, okay, that's part of what that was. He was performing partially for Andrew. So I didn't think that was supportive.
Okay.
But all adding to my thesis that maybe Andrew Ridgeley is not the hero of the piece, but, you know, there we go. And now all the Andrew Ridgeley fans are going to go, what is wrong with you? But I'm a cynical person. There I am. Okay. I think that's the end of our docs.
That's the end of our string of docs.
You requested a rewind.
I did request a rewind.
And you chose a very specific movie, and I immediately said yes, and then I was kind of like, oh, okay. I wasn't thrilled about it at the time, but I ended up being very thrilled about it.
Okay.
So I'm going to let you tell, share, you talk.
Well, it turns out Sleepless in Seattle, which is our rewind film, it's the 30-year anniversary of that film. Of course, it was directed by Nora Ephron and Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, Ross Malinger. I don't know how to pronounce it. And okay, the premise of this classic film is a widower's son calls into a radio talk show to find a new wife for his dad and a new mom for him. For the kids out there, it would be like calling into a live podcast.
Yeah.
Talk radio, right? Gosh. So Hanks is the sad widower, and as it happens, Meg Ryan is listening. She's engaged to the charming Bill Pullman, but we know this is not meant to be. How, you may ask? Well, he's pretty high maintenance, so that's our first clue. There are a lot of references to An Affair to Remember, and my advice is if you haven't seen Sleepless in Seattle, maybe watch An Affair to Remember instead, because I love Nora Ephron, I do, but this, I think, is just a stinker. I don't like this film. I think it's because she wasn't the screenwriter. She was the director. There's a lovely tone, but I feel like the biggest and honestly the most unforgivable mistake in this film is that you keep the romantic interests separate. And when I showed this to my daughter, she said, did Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan have scheduling conflicts? Because they're not in the same room. And I'm like, yeah, right? You're robbed of the electricity of the first time they meet. And, you know, because that doesn't happen until, spoiler alert, the last 5 minutes of the film, you know? And I have other important things to say. The only thing I think that makes this film beloved is Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. I think they were both wonderful, but that made me even more angry that I didn't get to see them together being wonderful. And I also kind of hated that the lovely Rita Wilson delivered a great emotional recap of An Affair to Remember, and then she's ridiculed by Tom Hanks and Victor Garber for being emotional about a film. And I was, I don't know, I thought Nora Ephron, I was surprised she directed it. I had thought she wrote it, and I'm like, wow, that's weird for her. But then I'm like, wow, I thought she knew romance better. And I was just, I don't know. So it's 30 years old. 30 years ago, I was the weirdo who didn't like it. And maybe I still am, because I know everybody's like, oh, Sleepless in Seattle. I'm like, they're never together. And I hate that. That's the thing about romantic shows or movies or whatever. That first kiss, like, don't rob me of that.
Right.
You got to show me that. You know, and it's got to be electric, you know, and So anyway, what are your thoughts?
Well, here's what's so interesting, because you were the one that recommended it.
I know.
And I was like, oh, because I remember watching it back when and not liking it way back when. And I was a big Nora Ephron fan, and I was like, what in the heck is wrong? What? And I didn't like it for a lot of different reasons. First of all, I was single when I saw it, and I didn't like it back then, and I was like, okay. And I'm somebody who's allergic to everything, so I hated that Bill Pullman was made fun of because he's allergic to everything. I hated that.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the fact that they never got to be on screen together. And also the fact that Rosie O'Donnell played the sidekick made me so angry, because at the time I was trying to be an actress, and everything I would go out for, they're like, oh, you're like a Rosie O'Donnell. And I would be like, this woman has taken all the roles. I'm never going to get cast in anything. So I didn't like that. But here's the thing. I wasn't thrilled about having to watch it again, and I watched it again, and I love it now. What? Okay. I love it now. And I thought that Rosie O'Donnell did such an understated performance. I did not appreciate the good performance that she did. I absolutely loved it. I didn't realize, even when I made the slide for it that Gaby Hoffmann plays the little girl in it.
Yes.
And I love her as an actress now. If you guys saw her on Transparent, oh my gosh, what a brilliant actress. I love Tom Hanks and I love Meg Ryan, and I love that they were separated, because here's what I've learned from K-dramas is that the longer than you can make the wanting, the longing happen, the more powerful it is. And so they did meet before the end of the film, but they didn't get to be all over each other and in the sack before the end of the film. I love this because there was a moment, there are 3 total moments
where they see each other,
and I love that. And I guess now that, because when I first saw it, I didn't know what my love story was going to be, and so I was like, this is crap. And now that I do know what my love story is, I'm like, this is great. This is wonderful. And now there are problems that don't survive because of the fact that there's a scene where a person underage gets on a plane and that we don't call the police.
Yeah.
Like, you can't get over that in 2023. So it is dated in that respect, but I thought it was great.
Wow.
I loved it. I'm a believer now, and I hated it before. So
funny.
So I am shocked.
I'm shocked that I still hate it. Yeah, I just,
And you recommended it and you hated it.
I don't know that I hadn't done the rewatch yet at that point. And I said, oh, it's 30 years old. And I thought maybe my mind will be changed because 30 years have passed. And that's always an interesting thing to show things to my daughter, because she's 23, so she looks at it with completely fresh eyes.
Yeah.
And I just love when she just went, did they have scheduling conflicts? What's going on? You know? And I'm like, I know. And and actually my uncle worked on this film. He was best boy, I believe, on this film.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah, so I don't know. And
I thought it was a very offbeat love story, like not your typical formula.
Okay.
But I like keeping them apart. Look, we've been talking about this so much because if you haven't watched the phenomenon that is K-drama, it's really a thing you got to watch.
I have not.
And your daughter has to watch if you're going to be a writer in any kind of production, because it's, Netflix is now sinking millions of dollars into K-drama because they're doing so well.
Okay.
And it's a very specific thing. And one of the things that they do well is they set up a conflict where our young lovers cannot be together, and that they must have this longing and this separation, a reason why, because otherwise with today's mores, if you watch any, romantic movie, they meet and on the first date, they're in bed, and it's like, okay, do they even like each other? Do they even know who each other are? So the K-dramas are doing this, and people are buying it because it's a little bit more, I don't know, I think it's more about the fairy tale of love. Trying to be, but that's what I love. I want to see the fairy tale of love. And so I think I feel
like there's an in-between somehow. But
it's a finesse to get there.
Yeah.
And in the K-drama, they don't have them, on opposite sides of the country the whole time.
Right.
But you have to come up, the key to a K-drama is you have to come up with a conflict of why these two people cannot be together. Even, all the Bridgerton, same thing. And the good Bridgertons have a good reason, and the bad Bridgertons have a reason that doesn't hold water.
Right.
But that's the key, is that you got to set up a place where there can be longing. And I thought that Sleepless in Seattle did that.
Okay.
So there we go.
There we go.
My opinion.
Never know what's going to happen on a rewind.
I know. I am shocked. I'm just shocked because I thought for sure you were a big fan of it.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay. Well, that's our movies for this month, but we've already got some things in the hopper for next month, but we want to hear from you guys. What kinds of things you're watching? What are you interested in? What would you like for us to compare notes on? Anything is game, whether it's television shows, series, whether a movie, it could be something that's just streaming. Things are going to start to thin out a little bit because of the strikes. So we're interested in any suggestions that you guys have of things that...
Or rewind films,
Yes.
I'm happy to look at an old classic again, because, it's always a delight and an interesting perspective.
Yeah. What are you looking forward to seeing right now?
Well, definitely the Barbie movie.
Yeah.
I just think that's going to be, I'm a big fan of Greta Gerwig, and so I'm interested to see how that plays out. There's a new Pixar film, The Elemental, that I kind of would like to see that. And then I don't know. I know that there's the Mission Impossible film that's in the theaters now, I believe, and then
Oppenheimer.
That's the other one. Yeah. Oppenheimer. I feel a little bit of trepidation because it's a 3-hour. I think it's 3 hours.
I think so.
Whew.
And it's because it's what's his name? Why can I not think who the director is?
It's Chris Nolan.
Yes, and so Chris Nolan hurts my head sometimes, but this is a pretty straightforward
story.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. I want to see how, kind of like the Wes Anderson thing, like what quirk he brings to it.
Right.
How he's going to tell this story. I am now excited to see Barbie, but begrudgingly, and I, if I'm sitting here in a month saying how much I love the Barbie movie, we will all be shocked.
We'll be shocked, yeah.
Right? So it's funny but everybody I know cannot wait to see Barbie.
My daughter's going
hoopla.
tomorrow night, I think it opens, and she's going with a bunch of her friends, and they all are wearing pink, and they are just super excited, and I was very conflicted when she was a child of giving her Barbies to play with, but I grew up with Barbie, and I thought, well, because there's the whole feminist thing or whatever, and I love that's what I love, that it's in Greta Gerwig's hands,
Well, yeah,
so that's going to be interesting.
The big quote is that Margot Robbie got the script and read it and said, "Oh, this is such a great movie. I'm so sad that it'll never get made. They won't allow this to get made." And of course, I've been in the movies theaters so often lately, and they play, the big preview, the trailer for it, and it very clearly says, if you love Barbie, you're going to love this movie, and if you hate Barbie, you're going to love this movie.
You're going to love this movie.
And I don't think I fit in either category. I loved Barbie when I was a kid. I mean, I played with Barbies, and like most of everybody else I know played with Barbies, but I did not continue that obsession as an adult.
Yeah.
And so where a lot of people, and I'm not, there are a lot of friends that I have that did, that they have like the collector Barbies and things. I'm not throwing shade on that, but
it just wasn't something
that wasn't I collected blue ball jars. I mean, so I don't have Barbies, and I didn't have a girl, okay, so, but my husband is redonkulously excited to see this movie. And I keep saying, who are you and what have you done with my husband? What? and my son is thrilled to see it, too. So, and you said your daughter is thrilled to see it.
Yeah, she's thrilled to see it, and I'm waiting to hear. I want to get the text as she leaves the theater of what she thinks of it. So we shall see.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I'm looking forward to is season 2 of Good Omens. I don't know if you saw.
I don't know that.
It's I believe Amazon, and it has David Tennant and Michael Sheen.
Okay.
And it's based on a Neil Gaiman, Terry Pratchett book, and they did season 1, and now they're doing season 2, so I'm excited about that.
Wonderful. There's a bunch of things on Apple that I can't wait to see, but I can't think of a single name of any of it. But there's a bunch of space things on Apple that have either just come out or are coming out that I'm all about.
Yeah.
Like I think one is called Invasion.
Oh, yeah.
I'm all about this.
Yeah, looks interesting.
Yeah.
Lots to watch.
There we go. For the moment, and then it'll all run out. Yeah. So there we go. All right, you guys, we're back on Monday with a Parent to Parent Autism Live, where we're going to be talking about my top 5 tips for getting funding for autism treatment.
Nice.
Because, if you don't have the money to do it, you feel like you're on the outside. So make sure that you tune in for that. We've got a big week for you next week, but I hope that everybody has a great weekend. Thank you so much for being here and doing this.
Thanks for having me.
I enjoy this more than I should. I mean, even the fact, I love it when we disagree.
I know.
That's just not right.
I know, we're both like, what?
Yeah. So anyway, we hope you guys enjoy it too. But thank you for being here with us, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.